Hello aviators, how are you? My name is Magnar Nordahl, I'm an ATR captain and instructor. In April 2023, Asobo Studio launched the ATR 42600 and 72600 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. They have made a very good presentation of the aircraft. This video is the first in a series of videos showing how to operate the ATR 600 series in accordance with the procedures given in the ATR Flight Crew Training Manual. Some of the procedures shown in this video cannot be replicated on a computer screen, but I have added some videos to show how the real ATR is prepared for flight. This video shows how to power up the aircraft from cold and dark and do the cockpit preparation checks. This is done before the first flight of the day, or when the aircraft has been unattended by the flight crew during a ground stop. At the end of this video, I will also show the short transit procedure, which is done during turnaround, and crew change when the crews can communicate with each other. There are already hundreds of liveries to download from flightsim.to, including most of the companies I have flown for. After selecting the aircraft and livery, we open a weight and balance page. Here we can adjust the fuel, payload and center of gravity. I will leave it as it is. But we must remember the empty weight, payload and the center of gravity, CG, as we will need those numbers later on. Since the ATR is manufactured in Toulouse, I will fly from there. Ramp 108 should be a nice place to start from. I select Toulouse as arrival airport. Longer flights can come later. After setting the time and weather, we are ready to fly. Here is a quick introduction to Asobo's ATR model. The video modes are as following. Control 1 shows the instruments in front of the captain. Control 2 shows the FGCP, Flight Guidance Control Panel, or Autopilot Panel. Control 3 shows the electronic flight bag. Control 4 shows the MCDU, which is used to communicate with the FMS. We also have the MCP, Multipurpose Control Panel, which is used to control the radio and navigation equipment. Control 5 shows the pedestal. Control 6 shows the overhead panel. And Control 7 shows the lower part of the overhead panel. Control 8 shows the central instrument panel. Control 9 and 0 are views from the passenger cabin. Back to the electronic flight bag. On the payload page, you will see the load and balance chart, as well as speed limitations. On the performance page, you will see takeoff speeds and landing data. On the aircraft page, you can control the doors, wheel shocks and GPU, ground power unit. We open all doors and connect the ground power. The tail prop is a probe that is attached to the tail bumper when the aircraft is parked on the ground. It prevents the aircraft to tip on its tail if you load too much in the aft part of the aircraft. To the right is a menu with some shortcuts, from cold and dark until you are ready to taxi. On the maintenance page, you can reset engine fire system, oxygen and cool the brakes. On the options page, you can select units and adjust the sensitivity of the autopilot disconnect and set up the throttle. But the most useful function is the display unit click spot help. The display units are controlled with the airface control panel, which is behind the engine control levers. While this works well in the aircraft, it's more cumbersome in the simulator. Therefore, the display units are clickable windows. The multifunction display has 4 functions. Click here and you get the navigation display. Click here and you get the system pages. Repeated clicks will open 4 pages in all. Click here and you get the performance page. And click here to open the airport map, which you use for taxi. When you are using the navigation display, you can select 3 modes by clicking in those areas. And to adjust the range of the display, you click in those areas. The green fields are to select the bearing pointers, VOR ILS, ADF, and off. Those functions are also repeated on the primary flight display, PFT. On the lower half of the engine warning display, EWD, you have controls for electronic checklists. The blue areas replicate the 4 push buttons on the EFIS control panel. You move the cursor up and down and validate the selection by clicking in those areas. I will make a video later on showing how to use those functions. But for now, just remember the click spots for the MFD. Next, we take a closer look at the controls on the pedestal. To the left is the parking brake. It is operated with the mouse. The middle position is the emergency brake. The parking brake can also be operated with the B key. In that case, the emergency brake is not available. This is the gust lock. When it is engaged, it prevents power to be increased for takeoff. The power levers have some positions you must be aware of. This is full reverse, ground idle, flight idle, the notch, which is the position from takeoff to descent, the ramp, which gives 100% power, and the wall, which gives emergency power, 115% torque. Before starting the engines, the power levers are set in ground idle, and we put the gust lock back on. The condition levers have 4 positions: fuel shut off, feather, which is the position used for engine start, auto, which is used for flight, and 100% override, which is used in some situations. Before start, the condition levers must be in fuel shut off. Finally, we have the flap lever, which should be in 0 position before we start engines. And if you fly the ATR 42, you will notice it has different flap settings. In the real aircraft, we will check some items when we enter the cockpit. And they include the escape rope and escape hatch, smoke goggles and oxygen masks for the observer, fire gloves, life vests, fire extinguisher and crash axe. We check that the 3 landing gear pins are in place behind the first officer's seat. We also check that all circuit breakers are in. The ATR has 2 circuit breaker panels, one behind the first officer and one in the ceiling. When seated, we will also check the emergency equipment at the station: oxygen mask, goggles and flashlight. And we check that all manuals and documents are in place. On the pedestal, we check that the brake handle, power levers, gust lock, condition levers and flaps lever are in correct position. On the central instrument panel, we check that the landing gear is down. Then we can sit down and start the full cockpit preparation procedure. We start with the overhead panel. First, we check that the windshield wipers are off. Then we are ready to select the battery switch on. You shall not lift the guard. This is only needed to activate override mode. And this is an emergency procedure. So battery on. Observe MFC self-test. and check that emergency and essential bus arrows are illuminated. Check there is no undervoltage light in the standby bus push button. When you check and set the nav lights on, all other lights should be off. We cancel flashing master caution light when appropriate. Monitor avionics power up and self-testing. In the aircraft it takes 80 seconds and you will hear a few alerts along the way. But in this model they have made a shortcut so the aircraft is already ready for the next step. On the left lateral panel we check the voltage of the external power. You open the cover and turn the rotary selector to external. It should read 28 volts or higher. We check the external power ready light and select external power on. We check the IESI is aligned and monitor the initialization of the rest of the avionics. We will now prepare the aircraft for external inspection. On the overhead panel we extinguish all white lights except probe heating and fuel pumps. On the MFD we open the AC Wild and Hydraulic Systems page. On the pedestal we press aux pump to pressurize the blue hydraulic system. This pump runs for 30 seconds. We select hydraulic crossfeed on. Then we check that the blue and green hydraulic systems are pressurized. If there is any leak, it will be discovered during the external inspection. Hydraulic crossfeed off. Finally, select beacon, logo and wing lights on. The other lights need AC wild power, so they remain off. Select emergency exit lights to arm. The captain will now do the external inspection. I have made a video about that. You can find a link in the description below. On the overhead panel, we select annunciator light to test and check that all light bulbs are illuminated. There are many hundreds of them, so take your time. Then, if it's daylight, select bright, or if it's night, select dim. We will now check the rows one by one. Minimum cabin light shall be off. The other lights shall be off during daylight. The fuel pump test procedure described in the manual doesn't work, because when you select the pump off, the feed or pressure light will remain off for another 5 to up to 30 minutes. Therefore, we test the fuel pumps in the following way. Fuel pump number 1 on. Check the run light. Check feed low pressure light, extinguish. Crossfeed on. Check the other feed low pressure light extinguished. This confirms the crossfeed is working. Fuel pump number 2 on. Check the run light. Switch off the crossfeed. We leave the fuel pumps on because they must be on for 2 or 3 minutes in order to read the fuel quantity correctly. For the same reason, the fuel pumps must also be on during refueling. Doors panel. 3 doors are open and the test function is for the cabin door and service door. When you press the test button, you test that the associated doors are simulated closed. Landing gear secondary indicator, 3 green. Multifunction computer, MFC, no lights. Flight control panel, no lights. TLU selector in auto. Engine number 1 fire panel. The test buttons are spring-loaded, so you cannot see the indications on the engine warning display. First, you press and hold the squib test button and observe 2 white squib lights. Then, the loop fault test. And finally, the fire test. Next row, there are 2 variants of the external lights panel. Here the landing light switches are on the left on the second row. The other variant has the taxi and takeoff light switch to the left. The captain is not performing the external inspection, so we leave the panel as it is. The propeller brake should be on, and here is a bug with this version of the simulator model. The ready light should not be illuminated unless you have pushed the aux pump. You wait a few seconds, you get the ready light, and you can lift the cover and select the propeller brake on. Then we close the cover. Further up on the panel there shall be no white or amber lights. The voice recorder test doesn't work in this version. Next row, seatbelt signs on unless we are refueling the aircraft. No device signs on. De-icing panel, 1 fault light. Anti-icing panel, no lights. We leave prop seating off, otherwise there shall be no other white lights. We disregard the available light for AC wild external power. Normally we never see this light, as AC wild ground power is only used by maintenance. The emergency locator shall not be tested, as it will send a distress signal on the emergency frequencies. Final row, pneumatics and air conditioning panel looks good. Oxygen on and check pressure. It must be at least 1400 psi. Smoke odor test. During the test, the avionics ventilation extract fan stops. It is reset with the exhaust mode push button. And finally, we test engine number 2 fire panel. We move on to the pedestal. Starting from the rear, we have the ATPCS static test. This is a bit cumbersome on a computer screen, as you will need to view the engine warning display. Therefore, I will show a video from the aircraft. Lift the cover and select engine number 1 arm. Observe the green arm light and that both torque indicators increase. Select engine 1 and observe engine 1 torque drop, engine 2 uptrim label, propeller 1 feather label and arm light out, and engine 1 out warning. We repeat the test for engine number 2. Test completed, close the cover. Panel lights. Sometimes the panels are a bit dull in this simulator, so we can select the lights on. Before the first flight of the day, we test all trims to full deflection. And that takes some time. In the aircraft we can apply all selectors at the same time. This is not possible in the sim, so I will just show the operation here. This is the standby pitch trim. The normal pitch trim is on the control wheel. Rudder trim. Aileron trim. On each side of the trim panel are the other control panels, one for each pilot. And ahead is the EFIS control panel, where you select what to see on the multifunction display and use the checklists. Those functions are duplicated with the click spots. The idle gate lever is checked in open position, there should be no amber light. The emergency audio cancel switch is guarded. Gust lock lever is on, flap set to 0. This is the MPC multifunction control panel. We press the nav push button until we see nav overlay. Set traffic to above, this is for the TCAS. Press surveillance push button. Select transponder 1 for odd days and number 2 for even days. Set the transponder to standby. Press surveillance push button one more time and set TCAS to auto. The radar is set to test. When we see the test image, we can set the radar to standby. On the central panel, we check the stick pusher shaker push button is in. Then we press and hold the APM test button. We will get the following messages: degraded performance, increased speed, and APM fault. PEC and boost, no lights. The power management selector is in fact two selectors, one above the other. We always move them together, so you must make sure they are synchronized. This video explains how to do it. The power management selector must be in takeoff position. We check the IESI, the standby instrument. There shall be no flags. Roll and yaw trims are set to neutral. The pitch trim is set when we have received the load sheet. We check flap 0. We check engine indications, normal. TAT and SIT shall be the same. We check the fuel used is 0, or you have to reset them with the performance page on the multifunction display. EEC and ATPCS push buttons, no lights. On this placard we have the maximum speeds for landing gear and flaps. This aircraft has a new pressurization system. The landing elevation will be shown here when the destination airport is inserted into the FMS. We check there are no lights and that the increase-decrease selector is set to 9 o'clock. Landing gear panel, anti-skid, no lights. Landing gear lever down and 3 green, no red lights. You should check the landing gear lever on your simulator control as well. This push button has no label. It is used to test the ground proximity warning system.
Terrain awareness, test, start. Terrain awareness, system, test. Terrain awareness, test, complete.
This is the standby compass. On the FGCP flight guidance control panel, we set the left pilot's nav source to FM1, which means FMS number 1, and right pilot's nav source to FM2. We check the arrow next to the coupling push button. It shall point towards the pilot flying side. This is important because this defines which navigation source the flight director and autopilot will follow. With the coupling set to the left, the flight director will follow the navigation source selected on the left pilot's nav source. With the coupling set to the right, the flight director will follow the navigation source selected with the right pilot's nav source. We will fly from the left seat, so we make sure the coupling is to the left. Before we start, we can put on a console light so we can see better. The console cover shall be closed and it should not be necessary to touch it. Just ensure that all switches are closed in guarded position. The extract airflow lever is guarded in open position. The oxygen mask has 3 tests, but we can only replicate one of them. Press and hold the test lever and observe the flow indicator. The other tests are done when you hold this lever down. We make sure this flap lever is set to 100% and this selector shall be in the upper position. On the right hand switching panel we have controls for reading light and console light. You set as required. There shall be no alert lights. The loudspeaker is set as required. Without headset you set high volume. When you wear headset, low volume. On the right instrument panel we check the clock time. On the PFD we check there are no flags and that the altitude is correct. We cross-check the heading indication on the HSI and the navigation display. If you don't see the navigation display, click in this area on the screen. The memo panel will show the status of the cabin signs, no device and seat belts. Finally, we toggle through the system pages. We click in this area and we check the indications. On the engine secondary page, we memorize the fuel quantity in each tank, as this will be entered into the FMS. When external inspection is completed, we can switch off the beacon lights and the wing lights. And if it's daylight, we will also switch off the logo light. The captain will check the left-hand side of the cockpit. First, release the gust lock in order to prepare for the stick shaker test. This area is dark, so we add some light. Open the console cover. The brake accumulator indicator should be dark. It is only used when the aircraft is not powered, for example during towing. The elect switch shall be guarded in normal flight position. To test the stick shaker, we set the test mode selector to yes. Hold the control column and press and hold the test push button. The stick shaker will activate. This is not possible to reconstruct with your flight controls. After 10 seconds, the stick pusher is activating, pushing the control column forward. We release the test button and set the selector to normal flight. And we engage the gust lock. We close the console cover and open the cockpit communication hatch. It must be open when you close the doors and remain open until we have started engine number 1. The nose wheel steering shall be on for taxi and off for pushback. We check that the nose wheel steering tiller is centered. The oxygen mask is tested by pressing this lever. There shall be no lights on the switching panel, and the ground proximity warning switch shall be covered. And we repeat the checks we did for the right-hand instrument panel. We have now completed the full cockpit preparation, and the aircraft is deemed to be airworthy. We only do this check before the first flight of the day, or when the aircraft has been left unattended during a ground stop. In all other cases, before the next flight, we do the short transit check. The short transit is easy. The captain opens the communication hatch and do the external inspection. The first officer will do the rest. Engine number 1 fire test. Cockpit voice recorder test. Engine 2 fire test. ATPCS static test. Trims function test. And flight guidance control panel initial setting. Finished. In the next video I will show how to prepare the aircraft for flight, including setting up the FMS, start the engines and taxi. Until then, thank you for watching, have a wonderful day and happy landing!